tavern doors you stroll in, from the wet and from the cold. Grab a friend and grab a chair, raise your mugs into the air. Warm your hearts with golden ale, stomp your boots in time with me. Sing along, the tune is fair, pitch right in and tell your tale. Through the tavern doors you stroll in, from wet and from the cold. Candles flicker on the beam, smoke and laughter thread between. Grab a friend and grab a chair, raise your mugs into the air. Fiddles scrape a merry line, tankards thud in steady time. The fire is stoked, the table's clean, the girls are nice but quick and keen. Travelers shake off road and rain, lean in close and call your name. Warm your hearts with golden ale, stomp your boots and raise a hail. Grab a book or find a bard, telling tales is not that hard. Sing along, the tune is clear, pitch right in so all can hear. Sing along, the tune is clear, pitch right in so all can hear.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Books and Bards, where unforgettable lines are transformed and given new lives. Tonight, I am not joined by Monarch Soul, who is still off tending to some family business. I am instead joined by Victoria.
Hello, Jojo.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you this Friday Eve? I'm going to name it.
It's Thursday Eve.
Well, I want it to be Friday Eve, so maybe we just split it down the middle.
Yeah, we're all waiting for Friday, hey?
Absolutely. But no, I'm good. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Rough day.
Oh.
Today is 30 days since Shyamala passed, and so that's kind of a marker. So there's kind of this 30-day period afterwards that is kind of prayers and offerings daily and so forth that goes on for 30 days, and then it ends with sort of the family gets together and prays and lights a lamp in a moksha lamp, moksha lamp, and I think they were in the temple that Shyamala went to. So I've been spending a few hours messaging with her friends, Shamini and Joanne, and Shamini and her husband and mom went and kind of represented for me. So and in 4 hours I have a meeting at 4 a.m. with HR in India for the job that I'm still interviewing for. So gonna be a long night.
Yeah.
Are you glad you asked?
Oh my, honestly, I am, because honestly, especially with today's theme, if I recall, we're going to be talking about what dreams may come.
Yeah.
And I think in many ways that's life has this beautiful way of mirroring poetry, or poetry has a beautiful way of mirroring life. And so I am glad I asked, because I think that it is such a human thing for us to experience grief. I think that there is a beauty in the grieving process, as hard as it is, but it's as hard as it is because it represents people and relationships that were so special to us. And so I am glad that I asked. I am even more thankful that you shared. And I just want to say, I did not get to know Shyamala myself, but just hearing your words of her, I believe, it's just a beautiful testament to the person she is, just because of what I know of you. So I'm thankful that I asked, and I'm going to have all my fingers and toes crossed for you for your continuing interview in 4 hours.
I actually this is with HR, so I think this is actually just onboarding and hiring.
Oh,
I think I've gotten past all the interviews really well, so I think it's probably more just to talk about the logistics, because there's a lot of logistics for moving internationally and work visas and all of that. So
yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, so then even easier than an interview. So
yeah,
I will still have all my fingers and toes crossed that it's smooth, because starting a new job is never easy, and it sounds like yours might have an extra little few quirks to it. So still, I'm saying every good vibe I have for your way.
Well, I've moved overseas to work several times now, and I've worked in Germany, Australia, and Singapore. So this is sort of old hat for me at this point, but still, there's a lot of process involved. So
Fair, very fair.
did you rewatch the movie?
I actually, it's one of my favorite movies. Just because I love the themes that go through in it. I mean, not even just Robin Williams' character and how heaven is represented.
Yeah.
So for those who have not watched the movie, and Jojo, please, if you want to give this introduction, please do let me know, because
no, you go for it. It's one of your favorite movies, and so
it is. So one of the things that I always loved about this movie is it's a tale of tragedy, but it's a tale of love. And it's a tale of how love overcomes death. And, I think back to at least the Christian marriage vows, right, which says, till death us do part. There's this idea that at some way we separate from our loved ones. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. But it's not a commentary on religion or anything. Just, I like to believe that love transcends, right? We don't stop loving a person just because they're gone. And I don't believe people stop loving us just because they're gone. And I think what Dreams May Come really showcases is that you have Robin Williams and his wife, who I believe is named Annie in the movie, and he's named Chris. And they have a daughter who dies. And later on, Chris also dies. And so Annie is left living in this real world with her world just basically shattered. And prior to these tragedies, Annie was an artist. And so what we see initially is heaven, this heavenscape that Chris is living in. And it actually looks a lot like Annie's paintings. And I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. But it's this beautiful understanding that our heaven is shaped by life and love and the things that impact us. And then, of course, Annie, overcome by just grief and depression and the tragedy of life, ends up committing suicide. And because of that, she is condemned to hell. And so Chris decides to give up heaven. He decides to go into hell to rescue Annie. And so it is this tale of how love is not really about just feelings for people. It's about how love shapes us. It's about how it's a choice that sometimes and often is sacrificial, which means that we give up the comforts, we give up our good, because we are seeking the best for those that we love. And in this, he's able to reconnect with Annie. Like I said, it's a beautiful tale, and I'm even more excited for the poetry that we're going to see from it. But anything you feel like I missed, Jojo?
So I guess a couple of things. As I recall, they had 2 kids who died in the car crash.
They did. I was thinking of the daughter. You're right.
Yeah,
they do have 2.
A son and a daughter, and the son, I think, plays as I recall, the son played part of a role in Chris descending to hell to rescue Annie.
Yes, he did.
Vaguely familiar. I don't remember the details, but
yeah.
So the other thing that I think is that it's also a story about how love can overcome grief. Annie's suicide is symbolic of her not being able to get past the grief, and so in a sense, their reincarnation at the end is love also overcoming the grief of losing the kids, because they decide to start over, and that's a hard decision, I think, for both of them to make, because their experience with life on earth before had been marked by tragedy and grief, and the grief that led to Annie's suicide. And so I think it's also a story about love overcoming grief, or at least I like to think so.
Absolutely.
I think one of the reasons that Monarch and I wanted to pick this was for those for the portrayal of heaven and hell, and also for the beauty of heaven. As you say, it was Chris's, heaven is shaped largely by Annie's painting or paintings. I don't remember, but it's just visually stunning. So it had some beautiful visual imagery to, that people could write to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that. I love that. And I do appreciate even the bits you added in, the decision for them to go back, the reincarnation, living life again. I agree that that's a hard decision, but at the same time, I think it's a beautiful decision to get to rewrite a past, if you will, or at least add on to a past. It was tragic.
Yeah. So it is a beautiful movie, but it's really just, like getting to the end and getting to the real beauty of it in the end is pretty traumatic, I would say, pretty emotional. So it seemed like really good substrate for some good poetry. And I think we got some. I hope you had a chance to look through.
I have, and I'm so excited to get to read these and talk about them because of that.
I've still got a ton of tabs open from the podcast earlier. But what am I? All right. So usually we start off talking about some of the prompts or maybe all of the prompts, and we tend to go through them. And so in this contest, we had our usual 6 prompts. The first 4 were quotes from the movie, and the last 2 were some images. And I guess we can sort of talk about the images.
Yeah.
But the first prompt was, thought is real, physical is the illusion. Ironic, huh?
Yeah.
And we actually had one poem. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, this is one of those things that I didn't write for this one because I'm just going to sit with you this evening and talk about these. But this is one of my favorite concepts, actually, is that we're all in our own head, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, like physiologically, and I this, but if you destroy the brain, you can destroy personality. There's a bunch of different cases throughout history where a brain injury creates significant personality differences. And so I love this one because, one, perception is reality. What we perceive may be different from others, and that is the reality in which you live. But also, we're all kind of in our head. It's our brain that's thinking. It's our thoughts that shape who we are and shapes the reality, and what is in front of us can be so ambiguous. And again, one of my favorite ruminations is like, is your green my green? Because different people can see different things, and we see that through color blindness, and even people having, I guess, various color cones in their eyes. So anyways, I love this one. But go ahead, Jojo. I got too excited about it.
No. So part of my science background is neuroscience, and
I love that.
The best known case of what you're talking about actually was a railroad worker named Phineas Gage, who survived some kind of an explosion, and but he had a 3.5 foot long iron rod that went blasting through his head and the top of his skull, and it destroyed most or all of his left frontal lobe. And so he was really heavily studied because he survived it somehow, and his personality changed really drastically. And so he was really, really studied. And there's a number of other kind of classic cases of this, but so this has been known for close to, I don't know, 150, 200 years. So my father also was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, but in the end, it turned out he had normal pressure hydrocephalus, which is the ventricles get kind of shut off,
Okay.
and then the pressure in the ventricles builds up and puts pressure on just generally all over the brain, and so I saw, his personality changed until the damage got so extensive that he was his quality of life went way down. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm like the initial stages of it were really severe kind of personality changes. So
Yeah.
yeah, that first quote kind of rings true for me anyway.
Yeah.
And we had at least one poem that addressed that quote specifically and even ended with ironic, huh?
Hmm.
So we'll see that very, very early on. What some folks call impossible is just stuff they haven't seen before. Yeah.
I love this one because in my own industry, I see a lot of times where people will say, that's impossible. You can't do that. And fact of the matter is that a lot of times they just haven't come across it. They haven't thought through it. Anything you put your mind to is not impossible. It's what you give up on that becomes impossible.
Yep.
But usually if there's an opportunity to really sit and sort through it, you're going to come out of it one way or the other. Can I fly? Not on my own. I don't have wings, but there's ways to fly. And I think that there's been beautiful leaps and bounds throughout society that we've seen simply because someone took an impossible thing
Yeah.
and chose to try it, chose to test it. And so I love this one because I think it reminds us that impossibility, the thought of impossibility, is a limit we place upon ourselves. Maybe it's
Absolutely.
just thinking outside the box.
Yeah. One of my first food jobs, I worked in a Shakey's pizza parlor way, way back. And I had a colleague, he was a high school student, and his name was Charlie. And we used to just we had this kind of thing that we would say to each other. That's so crazy. It just might work. And I often think of that. You come up with these crazy ideas, and they're crazy just because nobody's ever done them before or even thought of them
Yeah.
before. But you don't actually know that they're crazy until you try them. And I think
Yeah.
it's sort of speaking to that same prompt, it's just something that nobody's seen or done or tried before. The Wright brothers, like
Yeah.
flying, that was a crazy idea until they actually did it and showed that it could be
Mhm.
done. And now,
Yeah.
Monarch went and got on a plane this morning and flew halfway across Alaska.
Oh,
And we don't
yeah.
even think about it, right? So,
Yeah. It's become so commonplace when once upon a time it was impossible. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, third prompt. That's when I realized I'm part of the problem, not because I remind you, but because I couldn't join you, so I left you alone. Don't give up, okay?
I love this
Mm,
one because a lot of times, um, I think in our society we don't really take accountability as often as we probably should.
yeah,
You look at social media, TikTok, and all whatnot, and everybody kind of goes, "Well, it's not my fault. This happened to me. I didn't do anything wrong." When in reality, I think this really recognizes the human part that just because you don't actively do something, sometimes you can still be part of a problem.
yep,
This isn't. They're not a problem because they reminded them. They're just a problem because they weren't able to be there. And sometimes that is just part of the problem. Just sometimes part of the problem is just not being able to make a need be met, whether it's intentional or unintentional. And it actually reminds me. So we all have trauma. I have trauma. I'm in therapy for my trauma, as I'm sure
mm,
many people are.
uh,
But one of the things that my therapist has talked about is this concept of the river of cruelty.
Mm.
And he has one of the things is that cruelty can be unintentional. It doesn't have to be malicious. It
Yeah.
can be done in a lack of action. It can be done in a lack of word. Unfortunately, cruelty is just a crack, a scar that runs across the face of the soul, if you will.
Mm.
And in this way, I think it reminds me a lot of that river of cruelty. It's not always intentional. Sometimes being part of the problem is just the nature. Sometimes you just are.
Yeah. I guess sort of the biggest realization I've had in life is actually, oh my goodness. Well, it was 2009. It was this week, actually, in 2009. I went
Gosh,
to
you had a big week this week, Jojo.
yeah, it's a memorable week. I've been reminded of it on Facebook with all these memories. But
Yeah.
16, 17 years ago, this week, it was the Queen's birthday week then. Now it's the King's birthday week. But I went to Australia to finish landing this deal that would eventually make me move there. And I remember getting there and getting to the Novotel hotel, and got up in the morning and got in the shower, and they had an egg timer in the shower. And I was like, what's this? And there was a little sign. I read it, and it was like, we're in the middle of a drought. We have been for years. And
Yeah.
so please turn the egg timer upside down and finish your shower before the 3-minute egg timer runs out. And that was the first time I ever really had this sense of being part of a problem that I didn't really even understand existed. And it had a huge impact on me. I have not taken a shower longer than 90 seconds since that day. I mean, I was,
Oh, really?
yeah, I mean, I'm in and out of the shower in under 90 seconds. So, and that's why, because one morning in Australia in a hotel, I realized, oh, there's this big problem and I'm a part of it. And,
Yeah.
I use too much water. And yeah, so it's just one of those examples where, I grew up in California and later lived in Connecticut and so forth. But, we had some droughts in California, but it was sporadic, tied to El Nino. But here I was in Australia, where drought is like an annual problem. It's a constant problem. And, when you're suddenly faced with that realization that you're part of an unknown problem, it's no longer unknown, and it requires you to actually do something.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest example I have, I guess, of that prompt. So
No, I love that. I love that. And I appreciate you sharing it too, because sometimes when we think of problems, we think of personal problems, but there's also just like, how do we contribute to the bettering of the world?
Yeah.
And I think that highlights that, there's even small things that we just don't think about on the grander scale. This is not, fortunately, a problem that I have had, but talking about social media, there is a TikToker, I think his name's Chef Mo. And he does $5 and $10 meals that feeds families of 4 and 5. And people have criticized him because they're like, oh, you're not using the best stuff. And it's like, you know what? He's helping people with food insecurity. And so I think that's like, I think of the people who comment and are criticizing the fact that he uses like the wrong can of soup in their opinion, all the while he is in fact solving a problem. And it's just another reminder of the way that people can add to it. They don't know, and ignorance is bliss, and the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so I appreciate your example of this specifically because it reminds us that problems aren't just personal. There's sometimes bigger things to consider.
That reminds me of the Seinfeld episode with the muffin tops. Anyway.
That's a good one.
Oh, goodness. All right. Prompt 4. It's not about understanding. Yes. It's about not giving up.
Yeah. Yeah. That is, I'm 18 years into my career. So I'm unfortunately not one of the young ones in my life anymore. I remember once upon a time when I was a baby accountant, and it's just not who I am anymore, which is fine. I don't get paid like a baby accountant, so it works out, right?
Right.
But one of the things that I keep telling my staff is it's okay to fail. The only time that you've really failed, like you can give me an opinion, you can try something, you can create a new process. It may or may not work. That's not failure if it doesn't work. You tried. It is about it only really becomes a failure when you stop trying. And so I love this because it's such a simple concept, but I think it applies in so many ways. It applies to us professionally, it applies to us personally. It allows us to be reminded that not succeeding is not necessarily failure. And if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. So many things would not be around. The light bulb would not be around if they did not keep trying, if people did not keep trying. And I'm not going to get into like, did Thomas Edison invent the light bulb or
Right.
not? Because I know there's debate over that. But just finding even the right element to put in the light bulb to make it work. That wouldn't have happened if someone just gave
up. The background on my MacBook for 15 years now is actually from Thomas Edison's patent. It's the photo or the hand-drawn image of the light bulb from Edison's patent application. So
really?
Yes. I did a lot of inventing in my former job, and so yeah, I was always struck by it was like a 2-page patent application, just like a paragraph on the first page and this big image of the light bulb on the second page. And so that's always been my background since shortly after I moved to Australia.
Oh, that's amazing. I have to say, my elementary school, it is what it is. I went to Edison Elementary School. And so growing up, and again, it's been a hot minute. It's been more than a couple of decades since I walked out of school. But I do distinctly remember the way that the cafeteria was. There wasn't really a cafeteria. The main entry hall would have like these little roller carts set up to have like the salad bar, and then you'd go up to a window and they'd have like little things that you'd take your food back to your class. But they had a mural of Edison and the light bulb. And so when I learned that there's this controversy over Edison inventing the light bulb, like my world was shattered, because the first really 6 years, kindergarten through 5th grade, I was walking through a school very clearly saying Edison with the invention of the light bulb. So I love that that's on your laptop because it has a core memory of mine as well.
All right. So I think I will not attempt to, unless you want to take a pass at trying to attempt to describe the 2 image prompts. I think I will leave that.
What I'll say is if you've seen the movie, it is a picture of Chris's wife's Annie's kind of living oil painting. And it's basically, when you think of like just a vast stair with a ton of people, it's kind of like this stair of a bunch of people wandering through heaven. And so it's got this beautiful, rich colors. They've got like this dusty purples and whatnot. It's just a really beautiful image that's supposed to depict kind of where people are walking through heaven and traveling through heaven and having this afterlife. So it's a beautiful picture. The second picture is another one of Annie's paintings just come to life. So again, very beautifully stunning depiction of the afterlife in various places within the afterlife.
My favorite part of the of prompt 5 is all of the women with their umbrellas. I think it's
they're parasols.
Parasols. That's the name.
Yes.
So I love that. It reminds me of what is that a Monet painting of the people on the shore of the river and the women with the parasols? Just love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I never quite grew out of my goth phase, and so I actually am a person who I'm a Victorian goth aesthetically. And so my children and my husband have nicknamed it my sunbrella, but because I don't use it for the rain, I use it for the sun. So it's a
Right.
sunbrella, but it is just a parasol.
Yeah.
So it's what, again, this is part of where the movie just calls to me, because it just shows the accumulation of people and time, because you see those parasols, you see actually a few different clothing styles that just kind
Yeah.
of depict people throughout the ages who've all just been there.
Yeah. So the second image prompt I like, because it's this vast landscape. It's just kind of a barrenish landscape, but a single tree in the middle, and a person standing next to the tree, and lots of angry-ish looking or weird looking. I can't tell if they're clouds or if it's just sort of rocky hillside. Probably a rocky hillside, but I'm not sure about that. But I love the person standing there next to the tree, and it's a beautiful tree. So
yeah. Well, and just to note, the tree it's a barren tree too, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not, this is where I should have watched the movie again.
Yeah.
I think this is in his journey where he's venturing a little further away from kind of the golden lights of heaven, and he's on his journey to find Annie. And so I think that this is actually a really beautiful moment, because not only do you have this majestic landscape, you kind of see like some waterfalls in the background, but then it's also very barren. It's rocky. It's not full of life. And it shows that transition away from kind of heaven and the loneliness that there is, the loneliness of this journey that he's endeavoring on.
Yeah. All right. So we should move on.
If we must, but okay.
Maybe discuss a poem.
I'd love to, yes.
So I think I will start with The Body's Illusion by Walking Travesties, and I will leave Macris's masterpiece, The Lake You Painted for You, for the second, because I think it deserves a female voice. So I will start with The Body's Illusion by Walking Travesties. I thought it real. Blue blooming bruises beneath the skin. The ache in my palms like proof in the flesh. I trusted the mirror, such clarity in my reflection, an image with conviction. Believed the body because it screamed the loudest. But physical is the illusion, isn't it? How ironic. The things I could touch were the first to disappear. Pain had held weight until it was named. Fear had gnashing teeth until I opened my mouth and found it full of smoke. All this time, I was haunting myself from the inside, calling the walls real because I'd never seen what stood behind them. I thought I was this body, the scars, shaking hands, all beating with an animal pulse, just begging to be believed. I thought it real, yet something quieter, unmarked, unsilenced, refused to stop breathing beneath it. Physical is the illusion. Ironic, huh? End poem.
Oh gosh, Jojo, that was such a great poem and really a beautiful read. Thank you for that. Fun fact. I really, in many ways, I empathize with this one. I believe this is the poem you were talking about in regards to what was it, the first prompt, second prompt?
First prompt. Yep.
First prompt. Yeah. I'm empathizing deeply with this in some ways right now. So not that people need to know my medical history, but a little over 10 days ago, not last Saturday, but the Saturday before, I just had a sudden onset ear infection, just out of nowhere, no reason. Ended up having to go to the ER because the pain was so bad. Got put on antibiotics immediately. I actually woke up last Thursday losing over 50% hearing in my right ear just because of the buildup of fluid from the infection. And so on last Friday, they went in and they made an incision in my eardrum to help the fluid drain because it's just not doing what it needs to. And so hearing's getting better, but it's still a little wonky. I note that because you don't think about your eardrum until your eardrum hurts.
Oh yeah.
It hurts at the weirdest times. It hurts at the randomest times. Part of it's just the pressure being alleviated. But where I really am connecting with this is that when we think of what is in front of us, when we think of the physical, pain is a hard thing for us to ignore, right? Like I can ignore being warm, I can ignore being cold, but there's something about pain that just really demands our attention. And so the fact that he brings in or they bring in, a bruise, a scar, shaking hands, all of these are just kind of arriving with weight. We know what a bruise feels like. We know the pain that comes with the scar. And I'm sure we all have, anyone who has at least a decade on them, right, have some scar that is still sensitive years later. And so I find this because just it gradually takes us into the pain and then takes us out of it. And so I want to go back to that prompt, right?
Yeah.
Thought is real. Physical is the illusion.
Yep.
Ironic, huh? So we've been immersed in this pain, in the physical pain, in the emotional pain. And then we see the relinquishing of it. We see these things that should hold us into reality being lost until it's at this point where, I thought it was real, yet something quieter, unmarked, unsilenced, refused to stop breathing beneath it. It's that being drawn away from the physical. And I think that this so beautifully captures it because it draws us out of just the physical pain, just the moment, and takes it to something beyond that. It takes us to the soul transcending the body, the thoughts remaining, understanding that pain was there, but that they no longer bind them. And so it's that realization that this experience, this moment was but a moment. It was an illusion, and the real reality is beyond that. Just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I walk a lot for exercise, and I stopped driving when we moved to Australia as well, and because I didn't want to have much of a carbon footprint as well. So I do a lot of walking, and even though I love my hometown of Carlton, one of the inner suburbs of Melbourne, it doesn't exactly have the most even sidewalks. And I walk very fast, and I hit a raised edge of a sidewalk and face planted on the sidewalk, and came home literally dripping in blood from like 5 places. And I mean, I was really badly banged up, and it took a few weeks, but the bruises healed, the cuts healed, the bleeding stopped, etc. And that took a few weeks, but I think it was probably 2 years before that internal, the internal injury, the internal pain, that the feeling of fragility that was sort of the aftermath of that. It took a long time and some therapy to kind of work through, because the blooming bruise, was initially the pain, but the real pain was, you're getting older, and, you're getting a lot more fragile than, you're not 20 anymore, you're mid-50s now. And, that's the kind of a fall that, you can break a hip and bleed out in a matter of minutes. And so that internal kind of injury and pain was so much worse and so much harder to kind of heal and come to accept. Like, we learn to adapt to pain. But I mean, the internal pain takes so much longer, and it's so much harder to come to terms with, I guess. So
yeah. And I really appreciate you saying that. It's interesting. And I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I'm
no,
sorry.
keep going. Keep going.
It's interesting because my husband and I are celebrating our 10-year wedding anniversary this year. And
Mm-hmm.
so been together a little longer than 10 years, but we're celebrating our 10-year wedding anniversary. But just the other week, during the right time of the year, I worked some ridiculous hours. And I was listening to an old playlist and a song popped on from a gentleman I was dating prior to my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And the level of pain that came from it, like really
Mm-hmm.
it was rage. And I ended up writing a poem on it. But the level of rage that came with just this poem that has not been applicable to me for over 10 years just came back. And it's, I think what you're saying there specifically about how like that internal pain, the emotional pain, even the way that it can just kind of repop back and still feel so fresh. It does. It just takes forever, it seems, to get over. Even when it was maybe not even big things. I did not date the guy before my husband very long, but very obviously there was an impact there that it right song, wrong time.
Yep.
Victoria's pissed off. So,
It's amazing how strong how strong an emotion and a memory a song can generate, even like decades later. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's I've got a few pieces that
Yeah.
are designed specifically around music because I think that there is poetry and music, art, those all those things. I think that it's an expose of the soul.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Music is one of those that it I think it just touches a part of our soul that hits the right scar and it lights it up.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, it hits the scar and then it opens it all up again.
Yeah.
Oh, Robbie's here. Hi, Robbie.
Hey, you may call in. I love it. Robbie, you should call in. It'd be fun. The more the merrier. Would you like me to read The Lake You Painted?
So we gave that beautiful, really well written, really well crafted poem, "The Body's Illusion" by Walking Travesties, the gold medal. And as far as I was concerned, it was just an absolutely perfect response to prompt one. Just really brilliantly done. So I've read it probably 5 times now, and it still just strikes me as being a great response to prompt one. So thank you, Walking Travesties. It's completely earned gold medal.
Oh, absolutely. No, I fully agree. I think that was absolutely perfect. They really brought all the transcendence through it. It was remarkably done, for sure.
Yeah. So, yes. So this next poem is by one of my favorite poets in LNP, Macris, and this is called "The Lake You Painted." And how about you have a go at it, Victoria?
I love it. So this is "The Lake You Painted" by Macris. I'm sorry, babe. That time slipped away through meatball subs and smiles that wouldn't stay. For laughter gone before it touched your face. I dreamed we'd love as one through each age. Books unfinished, naps never taken, kisses that vanished like dreams when awakened. Our children sprang beyond our aging hands, roots twisting down safe from beyond frosted lands. A heaven soft, a world we couldn't hold. Quiet you painted from hearts spun of gold. Dreams of bodies folding into light. Lake in your mural, glimmering in our sight. Quarrels and hugs, times sharp and still sweet. Such little fragments that made life complete. Each kindness left, each glance we'd share. Living in wonder, such love and such care. Now even gone, love gathers our years, lingering past our sorrows and our tears. Beyond the chill, far past shadowed breath, our love echoes past the end we call death. Our love echoes past the end we call death. End poem.
Well, I'm glad you read that. I also wanted you to read it because I'm not sure I could have made it through that. I think this was, for me anyway, this was far and away the most emotional piece of the contest. And Monarch and I both really just, Monarch usually, I tend to go, judge things more by, poetics, form and so forth. But, and she tends to judge things more by emotion. But this piece, it was hard for me to just react to it anyway, other than emotionally. It was just so brilliantly done to just kind of slowly and subtly just trigger the tears and the grief, but in just lots and lots of really small, subtle ways. And Macris, I'm getting the sense that Macris is just a master at it. This is not the first time a Macris poem has, made me well up with serious emotion.
Yeah.
I loved the there's a shout out to the movie, the opening line, "I'm sorry, babe," and I think she talks about it in in the author's note. It's the sorry, babe monologue that Charlie speaks to Annie when he finally finds her in hell. So it starts off with a hat tip to a line from the movie, and it just gets more intense. I love all of these little details that might, I guess, seem a little odd, like time slipped away through meatball subs, but they just give it this incredible sense of, because it's the laughter gone before it touched your face. Books unfinished, naps never taken. All of these little, I think of the little colored ceramic fragments that make up this mural of this life together, and they're all really small. There's no huge image here. It's just lots and lots of these little fragments, and he just slowly paints this life together. As I say, nothing really big. It's just lots of these little bits and pieces of this life together. And so that's what I liked the most about it, was just how big of an emotional response she was able to generate with so many, tiny little fragments of images from a shared life.
Yeah. No, and I think I love that you kind of pull that out, because I think that when we think about the loss of a loved one, it is those little moments, right? It's not the wedding that is what is missed. It's the meatball subs.
Yeah.
It's not, the big trip to Europe. It was the laughter, the way that maybe they came up and just, I think of like my husband, he likes to come behind me and just kind of lean in and give me a kiss, put his hands on my hips and just give me a quick little kiss at just different times of the day. It's those little gestures that are lost when a loved one is lost. This is probably a little more than people need to know about me. But actually on the 14th of this month, when I was 18 years old, my boyfriend committed suicide. And so it'll be 20 years in 4 days. And again, it's part of where I appreciate this movie. Now, I don't believe that Renee was my soulmate. In fact, I'd argue my husband is. Just we were young, and he had problems and I had problems, and unfortunately he succumbed to his demons. Again, why I'm in therapy. But this poem in so many ways reminds me of that. I have been previously married, and when I was going through, and it was an abusive relationship, and in that time I would always say that I knew something was wrong when I could feel Renee, and I always kind of felt him behind my right shoulder. And that he would, I don't know that he actually was there. It was just always this kind of like, I know something's wrong, he's there. And this poem really reminds me of some of that. I think that the love for my husband, my love for Renee, they are not comparable.
Yeah.
They are two different things. Neither one takes away from the other. But this poem really does remind me of that. I still to this day love Renee. Nobody else remembers him. Like his family remembers him, right? But I
Right.
can tell you that the friends who I had at that time, they don't spend a day thinking about it. They don't look at June and think about the anniversary of his passing. They are not scarred by that. They've moved on, and that's okay. But this poem hits so beautifully in the way that that scar is brought up and reminded.
Mm.
How it can be brought back, even in the mundane, kind of like what we were talking about with the last poem, right? It's a song that pops up. It's a moment that pops up. It's a day that pops up. With Renee, for me, it was moments just because of who he was to me in that time, and who I needed in that time, and to have that loss. And
Mhm.
so I think that this poem, like you said, it's so beautifully emotional because it doesn't capture just the loss, it captures those lost moments and how
Mm.
those moments make you feel and how they impact you, because you don't really think about them until that person is missing in that small little moment, and the cost. So, and I do love kind of the echoing, the reminder,
Mm.
um, that it goes on past this point we call death.
Yeah.
It just reminds us that it goes on. So sorry, kind of a ramble there.
Well, so since you brought up the ending, I kind of did want to talk a little bit about poetics, because I think so there's this Lewis Carroll poem called the Hunting of the Snark,
Mhm.
where he says that what I tell you 3 times is true.
Mhm.
And I always take exception to Lewis Carroll for that quote, for that line. I think so when you say something in a poem once, then it's true. When you say it twice, you're reiterating that it's emphatically true. When you say it 3 times, you're trying to convince yourself that it's true. So I have sort
Mm.
of a rule of 1, 2, and 3, and Macris conforms to that rule perfectly here, because she ends it with "Our love echoes past the end we call death. Our love echoes past the end we call death." So I think that by repeating it 1 time, that it just, to me anyway, it just emphasizes the emphaticness of the ending. And
Yeah.
when uh, when she says past the end we call death, uh, she's also calling that into question. So she's saying,
Mhm.
well, there's this this death end, but she's not saying past death. She's saying past the end we call death. And so it automatically also calls into question whether or not death is the end. And so I think that's
Yeah.
a masterpiece ending.
No, I love that. And I wholly agree that it does come we don't know what happens after death, right? We've all got ideas, but I don't know that we definitively can say, what happens after death. And so I love your take. I've never actually thought about it that way, but I love your philosophy on that. You say it once, it's true. You say it twice, it's emphatically true. You say it 3 times, you're trying to convince yourself. I actually really like that. I'm probably gonna have to steal that from you, Jojo.
Yeah.
Um, but I do agree. It does call into question. We call this death, but do we actually know what's beyond it? We know that there's an echo. We know that something has continued, even though an end of sorts has happened. But do we actually know what that is past it? So I love that. I love that perspective. And Robbie's here.
Robbie's here.
Hello. I
Robbie.
love the enthusiasm.
Is it Robbie or is it Spock? And is Spock holding a black cat? I can't tell.
Yes,
He
it's a
is.
black cat.
That's what I
Cat-
thought.
Cats are only logical,
I know.
I was talking to
I'm not
Babbler.
so sure about that.
I was talking to Babbler, and like she doesn't have an icon, and I thought to myself, she came up with this idea. I was like, yes. So she's gonna put up as her icon is gonna be Data with Spot, and so
Oh,
it'll
gosh.
be that, and then I'll be Spock with the black cat, and they're kind of facing away from each other, so it's gonna be perfect.
Well, Robbie, since you're here, how
Yeah.
would you like to read Jody Melton's poem next?
Oh, okay. I like Joey's stuff, so that'll be fun. Okay. Beautiful Damnation. Another beautiful title by Jody there. He's got good titles. My Beautiful Damnation. They speak of heaven as though it were the final answer. A kingdom of endless light, rivers polished by eternity, golden gates swung wide for the worthy. But what is paradise without the one who taught my soul the language of wonder? What use is immortality if your laughter is missing from it? I would abandon halos like fallen leaves, lay down every promise of glory, and walk barefoot into the mouth of perdition, if it meant finding you there, not because hell is beautiful, but because you are. You with galaxies hidden behind your eyes, with a voice that could persuade winter to loosen its grip upon the earth. You who made ordinary moments feel sacred. The angels could offer me a throne carved from sunlight, a crown woven from dawn, and 1,000 years of peace. I would decline. Let the angels keep their heavens. I'd rather sit beside you at the edge of some infernal fire, watching sparks rise, like failed prayers, sharing stories until suffering forgot its own name. For what is hell but a place absent of love? And what is heaven but the place where love remains? The maps have always been wrong. The holy men never understood. They searched for paradise above the clouds, while I found mine in the curve of your smile. So when the last trumpet calls and every soul is called home, if they send you to the darkness and me to the light, I will step from the light without a second thought, searching wildly for the touch of the one who taught my heart that even in the deepest darkness, a single beloved soul can make hell feel like heaven, because eternity itself could not tempt me away from the miracle of your company. And if loving you is my undoing, then let the stars bear witness and collapse like dying embers. I will always choose you over forever. End poem. I got choked up for a minute there. I was learning about someone's hurt today and kind of trying to hug their hurt, and it reminded me of that. And so I never got really choked up for a second.
Well, I think if you don't get choked up in a Jody Melton poem, you're probably not. You're just reading words and not thinking about what you're reading. So Jody has that effect with almost every poem. So good read there, Robbie. What'd you think there, Victoria?
Gosh, I love this piece. I think specifically because it's not just this love poem, but I think philosophically it's just really quite beautiful. I gotta go and scroll and find it real quick. But Jody says, for what is hell but a place absent of love? And what is heaven but the place where love remains? The maps have always got it wrong, have always been wrong. The holy men never understood. I really love that, because I do believe that heaven is a place of love. I think that if we are not surrounded by love, what is the purpose of being there? And I do believe that hell is that absence of love. I think that it is that absolute isolation that there's kind of like, there's a difference. I learned way long ago when I was in high school. I did a whole meditation on what is it to be alone? What is it to be lonely and what is it to
Mm,
experience loneliness?
yeah.
Because technically all three of those things are different, right? You can
Different.
be alone physically, you can be lonely in a very crowded room, and then there's like true loneliness and isolation. Um, and I think that this really kind of leans to that. It heaven has already been found because of the love that they have. They know where their home is. They know where their sanctuary is. And there's not a heaven where that person is not there. And so very easily there may be, a gilded cage, if you will, of heaven, which is not typically how heaven is described, but a gilded cage of what is supposed to be this comfort and this perfect paradise. But if it does not have love, what is the purpose of being there? Because without love, these things are futile. And I would argue that we actually see that play out quite a bit in society by itself, too, right? We see great and powerful people who, by all rights, have the comforts of their life, and yet they cannot
Mm,
hold on to love. And there always seems to just be that constant searching for something. And it's just a testament to how truly impactful and needed I think that we seek that true connection of love, that true connection of community and companionship. And so I think that this, in such a simple way, draws us in first to the person and into what that person truly means, the kind of the reality that awakens. And it does remind me even of the first prompt, right? The thoughts are what's real, it's not the physical. It This really draws us in to understanding that it is that person, that soul, that is what matters. It's not the space that you are in, but it's that anchor that you have with that person. So I think it's really quite a stunning piece.
um, yeah, so it occurs to me that in the movie, when Charlie dies, he goes to heaven, and it's this his picture of heaven is his Annie's paintings in a sense,
Mhm.
um and so he goes to this place that he thinks of as heaven because she is there with him in the paintings and the whole bit. But then she takes her own life, and you know goes ends up in hell. And in a sense, he abandons heaven, but I kind of wonder if at that point it's like his version of heaven is ruined because she's not there. So even
Mhm.
though her paintings might still be there, he knows that she's in hell. And so
Yeah.
in a sense, he leaves it, and it's portrayed, I guess, as leaving heaven to go search for her in hell. But in a sense, it's become his hell now because he's surrounded by her paintings. It looks like her paintings, so it's a constant reminder of what he's now missing because she's not there. And I think anyway, that I think Jody captures that idea in this poem in those two stanzas that you quoted. And if you hadn't quoted them, I would have, because those are my uh, I think those are really kind of the strongest images or
Yeah.
ideas in the poem. So in a sense, I think I'm not really sure at that point that Charlie is abandoning heaven. I think he's abandoning what has now become his own hell, because that's it's just this constant reminder of her and the fact that he's now without her because she's in hell. So yeah. What did you think, Robbie? Have you recovered from your Jody Melton reading?
Yes, I'm recovered. Yes, I bounced back pretty quick.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this subject a little bit. It came up elsewhere. I think I was thinking about it in the previous poem a bit, but also at another point recently on AP. But this idea of the relativity of heaven and hell, and it how it's this, a lot of it is an inner state as much as an outer. Um, One thing that I thought I thought a lot about over recent times is how
your life could be exactly the same, but if someone that you love deeply disappears, like they die, unfortunately, it becomes hellish for you. And you could have a very good life. You could be like going to concerts and you still all those things that are really good, like the concerts, the stability, like a stable income, all these things, and it could be absolutely the same. But now she or he is gone, and you're just freaking miserable. And because they've integrated themselves so much in your life, they've added so much to it, and they're mere, even if they're not actively doing anything, their mere presence, they're being with you side by side somewhere, like at a concert or whatever. It's just so becomes a part of how you enjoy your life and what the definition of your life is, that they're gone and they're like, okay, all of a sudden this stuff would be great, but now she's gone and I'm miserable. And it's such a, when that happens, like, you think to yourself, well, what do I do? Right. You just learn to live with it as best you can. And I like being the astronomy nerd that I am. I like the cosmic images here. Then let the stars bear witness and collapse like dying embers. I'll always choose you over forever. That's such a beautiful sentiment there. I'll always choose you over forever. Like, what could speak of devotion more than choosing eternity, or choosing someone over eternity? It's just like one of the most profound ways you could say something like that.
Yeah. It's a good piece, isn't it? I think we had a tough time kind of teasing apart the medal winners, and Jody Melton always makes it difficult.
Absolutely. I can absolutely see why. And I think what's really beautiful even about, because these are the top 3 winners, right, Jojo? Yep. The gold, silver, and bronze.
Yeah, I have to say Macris, we gave Macris the silver, and it was just because it just hit so emotionally hard. But and Jody, we gave Jody the bronze, but we had a tough time just like figuring out what little nitpicky things we should use to kind of like separate them. So all 3 of them were just so good. Actually, the rest were too, but yeah.
So what I want to say real quick on that, though, is I can absolutely see why you and Monarch had such a hard time picking between them, because all of them are absolutely exceptional, but they're also so different. They're each hitting these beautiful different components of this, not just the film, but really of the process of grief, of the experience of it. And I think that you're right, where this one really comes in is it is that reminder of, heaven is not heaven. It does become hell. And I think that you both said that really well, when the person who matters to you, who is your heaven, is not there. So I can see why all 3 of them are in the top. But also, man, I do not envy you and Monarch having to pick winners on this one.
Yeah. So, in the end, we often have 3, 4, 5 really strong poems, and then we say, well, what do we want to use to like, what do we want to reward, what do we want to use to differentiate them? And because there's all sorts of different factors that you can take into account, and so, yeah, I mean, if we had just decided to emphasize one thing slightly more than another, it could have really changed the rankings of these. So, yeah, I don't even remember in the end, I felt like Macris's was just hitting all of the emotional high points, and since Monarch tends to really appreciate sort of the emotional impact, maybe more than form, because I think Jody, Walking Travesties and Jody Melton had really great poetic form, and Macris love macros. Oh, the other thing I liked about macros, I forgot to say, is I have this prejudice against about rhyming poems, and that, you know, rhyming poems tend to make points rather than hit the emotional buttons. But Macros's poem was rhyming, and it hit all of the emotional buttons. So Macros also sort of was the counterpoint to this terrible prejudice that I have as well. So to me, that was something that helped differentiate Macros's piece as well. But you know, in the end, you could literally, with these 3 poems, you could flip a coin and, you know, just assign them randomly, and it would have been completely defensible. So you know, if we could have given 3 gold medals instead of a gold, silver, bronze, we would have. I mean, full stop. So it's also really hard not to give Jody Melton a gold medal, because his poems are always so strong and you know, hit hard. So what do you think, Robbie? Did we get it right? Oh, Robbie,
he's muted. The mute monster got him.
Yep, the mute monster.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was checking. I was checking something else. Yeah, I think you got it. I think you got it right.
Okay, so I will post a link to Surviving Sacrifices piece, Mother Tree, and I will give that a read. Mother Tree by Surviving Sacrifice. In my dreams told me about our tall tree that bore no fruit. She would tell me that the tree was magical. It won't grant any wish. It creates something powerful. One day, I walk under and retreat in its shadows, touched by its branches inside the meadows. I immediately felt safe in its arms once more, protected from the dangers of people. I felt like I didn't understand why. People can be cruel to me and destroyed my body. But then I woke up and went to the bathroom. I looked at the mirror and thought, maybe I'm not in eternal doom. End poem.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Robbie, what'd you think?
Well, what caught me was, as I scrolled to the bottom, then I woke up and went to the bathroom. I looked in the mirror and thought, maybe I'm not in eternal doom. That's a fascinating turn of phrase there, not in eternal doom. I'm guessing that it's the feeling of where you're just hopeless and you feel like no matter what you're doomed. And that's the thing, they're looking in the mirror, so they're looking at themselves thinking that. So it feels a little bit like there's a feeling of that. There's a bit of an internalization perhaps of that doom, because they're looking at themselves in the mirror. And I like the sentiment of, I immediately feel safe in its arms once more, protected from the dangers of people. I remember I heard somewhere on a YouTube video pretty recently, and they're saying like this phrase doesn't mean what you think it means, is hell is other people.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And they're saying that it's more so not that the people themselves are hell, but that it's their judgments. That like when you're around other people, you're constantly getting judged, and it just surrounds you every day, that they're putting their judgments and evaluations and that on you. And so it's an interesting sort of reflection on these escapisms of and internalizations of states of mind, with the looking in the mirror, feeling safe
in the arms, and I'm thinking about like the shelter of the tree. One day I walk under and retreat in its shadows, touched by its branches inside the meadows. It kind of makes me feel and think of like a forested area that's safe. And I just thought of the opposite of the gimpy. The thing that's called the gimpy tree. It's like this tree that you cannot stand under. Like one person that's stood under it, like it has like these something glass like kind of fibers or something to the leaves or whatever, and the person died when he went under it, because not because the tree did it to him per se, but the pain of it was so great that he just committed suicide. And it's just like, oh my god. I had no idea a tree could be that lethal that way. So it reminded me randomly of that tree because I thought of shelter, and it's funny how poems will do that sometimes. It's talking about one thing, but you're thinking about its opposite too, because its opposite is such a powerful force, and so you end up thinking of its opposite as well. And I'm just looking also at it at the beginning. In my dreams, told me about our tall tree that bore no fruit. So I'm thinking about what that means, and how, yeah, like you talk about how plans that don't bear fruit, and this sounds like trying to get out from the situation where it's our tall tree, so it's, it's being shared with another person, and it's trying to get out, mutually trying to get out from under this shade of circumstance that you're in, that isn't bearing any fruit for you in life.
That's great. I really appreciate that too, because I think about, first the phrase, the grass is always greener on the other side. Really, the grass is greener where you water it, right? But we are often fruitful where we spend time, and fruitful does not necessarily mean the bearing of fruit in the way that we think, right? There's a lot of hardships, labor, just arguably. It's been through it twice, and I would not call that a fruitful thing. I got a baby out of it, but it's not the end goal, right? The real bearing of the fruit of having children is not the birth, it's the raising of them. And so I appreciate what you say there. What I find interesting, and again, I always kind of go back to personal, and we've all got weird situations in our lives, right? That we can kind of bear back to. But when I was a little girl, my father purchased a large lot of land from our neighbor. It was the Rormans who lived next to us. And the Rormans originally owned quite a bit of farmland. In fact, Charles Rorman developed the mouth to snout and mouth to beak CPR resuscitation that is used today for animals. And so I was quite lucky to grow up next to these individuals. They've both passed at this point, at this stage in my life. That being said, the Rormans' yard that we did not purchase, the part that they kept to themselves, they had several trees on it. They had cherry trees, they had strawberries, which granted not a tree, but still lots of fruit. They had apple trees, crab apple trees. They had an apricot tree, and the apricot tree was Elva's favorite tree. And as a little girl, as a child typically does, I'd always try and climb up these trees. And Elva would always get mad at me. And she'd be like, Victoria, you need to come down. You're too little. You're going to fall. You're going to hurt yourself. I really moved in next door to her when she was 81. But she knew my father when he was a kid. So much older. So Elva was very near and dear to me. There's a lot of reasons behind that. Again, we've all got stuff. But Elva played a very prominent part in my childhood and in my young adult life. When I began playing the violin, this woman very graciously let me come over and play the worst versions of hot cross buns to her on the violin. I remember the day she died.
Mm.
We had gone on a family trip, and I remember going over to Elva's house, and Elva had a cold. It was going to be about a 2, almost 3-week vacation where we were going to drive to hit a few national parks, going down to the Oregon coast, spend a week at the Oregon coast, and come back hitting a few more national parks, with the last one being Rainier. And so before we left, I went over to the Rormans, and Elva would not let me come near her because she was sick. And so I remember walking in her house, getting ready to hug her and tell her that I loved her. And she said, "No, you need to go. I'm sick. I'll see you when you get home." And I spent those 2, almost 3 weeks just taking pictures and capturing memories, because what I was going to do was come home, and I was going to go to the Rormans, and I was going to spend a day with Elva, and I was going to show her all the shells that I got, because we'd rented a house on the Oregon coast, and I'd taken pictures of the sea lions that were sleeping on the rocky beaches, and I'd go out, and since we had a private beach, I would get the shells. I bought her a present, and we were going to spend our last night at Mount Rainier. We were driving up to Paradise, and as we had entered the park, God, I'm going to tear up on this.
Mm-hmm.
As we entered the park, my parents got a call, and it was Kelly Rao, and she was calling to let me know that Elva died that morning. So I spent the night at Paradise, which was Elva's favorite place in the world, and I came back to a missing neighbor who I loved dearly.
Mm-hmm.
The really interesting thing in this is that the year that Elva died, I was going into 8th grade, and that apricot tree, it stopped blooming. It did not produce fruit for 4 years. And so I would go over there. I'd visit her husband, Charlie, and I'd go over there, and I'd help him tend to the plants that were there. He was also getting up in years. He survived about 10 years after Elva did. But I would go over there, and every year I would check the apricot tree. It would bloom and it would not produce fruit. It would bloom and it would not produce fruit. And I'd watch all the white petals fall down and no fruit would come. The year that I graduated high school, it produced fruit for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it has bloomed every single year with such a bounty since. I'm not an agriculturalist. I don't know why this apricot tree didn't do that. But it has bloomed every year since. Now, I am a little perturbed. There's a new person living in the house, obviously, because the Romans have been dead for a long time now. And they painted the house, and I'm just not okay with it. But the apricot tree is still there. And my parents still live next door, and I still get to go and visit that apricot tree. This poem very obviously was not written in honor of the apricot tree that is so special to me, but in so many ways it reminds me of that, because that tree gave me comfort. That tree still gives me comfort. It is still the place that I can go and feel safe. And I do not eat the apricots that come off of it. They're not mine to harvest. I'm not going to do that. But it is something so much more powerful than just some fruit. And this really reminds me in that capacity of the resilience of that apricot tree, which I think is just a beautiful metaphor, really, for even people. We can go through these times of being barren. We can go through these moments where we just don't feel fruitful, but it does not mean that it is the end. It does not mean that we are dying. There is still shade to be had. There is still safety to be had. There is still those opportunities. And it is a reminder that no matter how hard it is, no matter how dry or hot the summer is, that we are not in an eternal doom. There is something that is going to come later, and it is still going to have beauty, and it is still going to have purpose, even if it's not what we think that purpose is. So probably not what this poet meant, but it's what it meant to me. So I apologize. I'm now teared up. Robbie's teared up. Jojo, you're next.
Oh no. I'm definitely going to skip over the story that I was going to tell. So no. Yeah. So I think this was in response to that 6th prompt of the person standing next to the tree. As you said when we were talking about the image, it's a barren tree. So that first stanza, our tall tree that bore no fruit. I guess the fourth stanza, I immediately felt safe in its arms once more, protected from the dangers of people. I grew up south of you a few miles, Victoria, in Northern California, in the middle of the redwoods. And I don't, most of you probably haven't seen redwood trees up close and personal, but they're tall, and they tend to not have lower branches, so they're not climbing trees. But, you know, my dad used to be an electric serviceman for Pacific Gas and Electric, and so we had climbing gear, or I should say he had climbing gear that I routinely borrowed, and I would use the climbing gear to get away from people, generally my brothers, because I have 3 brothers, and it was always nice to escape from them. But I learned pretty young how to climb redwood trees that didn't have branches for the first 20 or 25 feet. And so I would like escape life and escape siblings and, you know, climb up these redwood trees where literally nobody else could get to. And I had a favorite that had redwood trees in the wind. They often lose their tops. And so I had a favorite tree that had been topped. And so if I climbed all the way to the top, which was about 200 feet off the ground, there was just like this, you know, it had lost its top. So there was just this like nice layer, I guess, of branches. And I could just lay up there and on my back and look up at the sky as far away from you know, the rest of the world as possible. And so that's where I would often go to reflect and be alone. So that fourth stanza, you know, of feeling safe in its arms once more, just reminds me of my redwood tree, protected from the dangers of people, and not that like my brothers were a danger, but just, you know, that I guess they were a danger to my solitude and my ability to find quiet and peace. You know, you grow up in a house of 6. There's not very much peace and quiet very often. So so that was my place of safety. So I really liked that fourth stanza. I liked the whole poem, but that fourth stanza kind of spoke to me that way. But also the ending here, they say, I looked at the mirror and thought maybe I'm not in eternal doom. I got the feeling that maybe that tree that the person is standing to next to in the prompt, that, you know, people and the person in that image prompt, you know, they kind of remind me of people too, right? I mean, trees have arms, people have arms, and so I got the sense in that last stanza that maybe the tree was also sort of acting as the mirror for the person, and maybe they're both making each other feel safe. So I thought that last stanza did a little bit more work than when I first read it. So I like the ending of this as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do appreciate you hearkening it back to that picture, because it's a poignant picture, you
It
know,
is.
having that barren tree and feeling like, I could imagine that tree feeling much like it is in its internal doom, but it doesn't have to be.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Well, I think the next poem is, who read that? Oh, the next poem is,
I think it's my turn.
Victoria. I think so.
Beautiful. And this is I Won't Give Myself Up for You by My Summer Job. You tell me to stop, and then I'm not getting it. Your face turns bright red and damaging words you spit. But you do not stop. You then have to hit a wall. With this little stunt, you prove again you are small. This all comes down to the way I always act. I'm not a lemming, and you cannot stand that fact. You truly must think if you scream then commit sin, you will get your prize. However, I won't give in. It doesn't matter what you say or even try. I will carry on. And to you, I say goodbye. End poem.
Yeah. So, I got to look at my notes from the so I guess I wasn't quite sure how this aligned with the movie, and so I guess I was not sure of that. But Victoria, you've seen the movie probably more times than I have. What do you think? Is this just is this aligned with the prompt through the just through the moral certainty of the position?
You know, I would not originally point this towards the movie. No, this poem does not make me think of the movie. Just I think it deviates from the theme, but I can see where they got their inspiration. It looks like they went off of prompt 4. It's not about understanding, it's about not giving up. It's interesting because there is a heavy theme of not giving up within what dreams may come. There is very obviously a tragedy because someone gave up, which precipitates the entire beautiful journey that we get to see Chris go through. But this one feels more like an abusive relationship. And I think that's where I feel like it really deviates, because it's about someone not giving up on themselves. And I think it maybe loses a little bit of the love. It's a love for yourself, which is a beautiful thing to have. We should love ourselves first. Pour from the full cup. But I do read this.
It's prompt 4. I didn't read the author's note. It's prompt 4. I'm an idiot.
Yeah, so it's coming from prompt 4. I don't see the movie in it. But I do appreciate the staying true to yourself. And so if I take the movie out of it and I think of the prompt in that respect of someone not giving up on themselves, the psychology of an abusive relationship, and Jojo, I'm sure you know this better just because your industry and your experience, right? I am not a psychologist. I haven't done anything medical. Abusive relationships are really interesting because they tend to accelerate because something bad happens and a person comes back, and then they accelerate and the person comes back, and that keeps happening until something really, really bad happens. And it's why abusive relationships are so detrimental. So I think that this to me reads like a breaking of an abusive cycle. Again, it does not bring me to the movie, but I think as a standalone piece with the thought of not giving up on yourself, it's beautifully said. It's simple. It feels like it's creating boundaries. It reminds me about, like, you don't jade an abuser. You don't justify it. You don't bargain with them. You don't discuss it. You just kind of lay a boundary and you let it lie. It's not open for debate. And I think that this very clearly kind of does not jade with an abuser, but I don't see it go back to the movie, but that's okay. They still got beautiful inspiration out of it. And I think it's a beautiful piece that really affirms staying true to yourself, even in these hard situations, even when it means walking away from someone you think you love or someone you think loves you.
What I'm really being an adult about is that not everybody that writes to our contests has read the book or seen the movie, and so some of them are simply responding to the prompt, and so this poem is clearly responding to prompt 4, and it very well may be that they haven't seen the movie, and so there was there's no obvious alignment with the movie, but it's very well aligned to prompt 4, and
for sure.
So I was just being a complete dolt. The absent-minded scientist didn't read the author's note. So
You didn't carry the 4.
yeah. No, I think this was a really good description of an abusive relationship, and the ability to walk away from it, and to not give up on themselves, I think, is how I would describe it. And but also not staying and continuing to take the abuse, because there's really clearly there's verbal abuse, and in a sense I think that second stanza is it escalates maybe a little bit to more physical. You then have to hit a wall, and so I'm getting the sense of the partner, or the partner moving beyond yelling and then maybe punching a wall, as maybe someone might do when they're angry. And so yeah, I mean, I think that the description of the abusive relationship is strong. And but then they kind of turn it around on themselves. This all comes down to the way that I always act. I'm not a lemming, and you cannot stand that fact. So they're sort of relating it to themselves. So then they remove themselves from that situation, and they carry on, and they say goodbye. So I think it is a really good response to that fourth prompt. What do you think, Robbie?
It reminded me in a way of how, because of the language of it, even though it's not where it was headed, with when somebody tries to get you angry, and you don't get angry, and that just makes them even angrier. Like, why don't you get angry, damn it? That happened in another poem a couple of days ago. Just because of how it's phrased with them. Like, you tell me to stop, or where actually was but you do not stop, then you have to hit a wall. Sounds like it's like a petulance there. You have to hit the wall. You hit the wall with this little stunt. You prove again you are small. And I like the emphasis on with abuse and abusive people. We're seeing that with a lot of politicians these days, actually, and the way they're reacting. The petulance of when they're being called out for the blatant lies and all that, and they get so upset. It's like, how dare you question my obvious lie? And you're like, yeah, whatever, go F yourself. and yeah, there's this feeling of the ego, and how it's small. With this little stunt, you prove again you are small. And and them being upset too. Like, this all comes down the way that I always act. I am not a lemming, and you cannot stand that fact. So yeah, a lot of this is couched to me in terms of how the abuser is getting frustrated that this person is starting to stand up to them, or that they really are maybe in that process of standing up to them. It doesn't matter what you say or even try, it will carry on, and to you I say goodbye. And there's it's just devastating to somebody who is abusive, but especially someone who's like a narcissist. This would be actually, I think, good in a way for someone who's a narcissist, this poem, because a narcissist, they just can't stand when the world doesn't orbit around them, and they just become infuriated, incensed when you don't feed into that. And so I thought the poem had that sort of a vibe to it, where this is in the process of that relationship where they've decided that they have enough and they're leaving, and the abuser's just losing their mind, because because the person's not accepting it. They're not having any of it. And I remember when I don't usually share too many personal details, but when I called my mom and said, "Hey, guess what? I'm leaving. I'm going to my dad's," because it was the legal age in Canada back then was 16 for deciding which parent you wanted to live with, and I went with my dad, and my mom flipped her lid, and I was like, and I can't remember. I think it just a couple of seconds of like screaming, and I just hung up, because it was an abusive person, right? And mentally and physically, that's what she was like, and and it just it shattered again. Like, it reminded me of that, because shattering of the ego, and so it's just amazing how they'll hold on so tenaciously to that. The idea that you would dare to leave them, even though they're treating you like shit. So, but anyways, I'll hang up, but I'll listen to the rest of the show. I just gotta get myself ready for bed. But I'll listen to the rest of the show. I have physiotherapy tomorrow, so want to get ready.
Well, thank you for hanging out with us, Robbie.
Yeah.
It was my pleasure.
Always.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I think that means the next poem is mine to read. So I will post the link. And this is called, I think this is called Driven Completely. But it might be called Driven Completely, a conversational style poetic prose by Anonymously Known. You know, the comedian, the great actor Robin Williams studied acting at the great acting school called Juilliard. I do not know what this means to love as completely as to say, no, I'm not going to have regrets. I can't give up on the innocence of this moment. No, I won't give up. Then I do give in to my doubt and or confusion, leading to a terrified heart and mind. That freezes with every emotion, giving up and leading onward within this world, sadly enough. As this closes in from within and all surrounding me, do not trust me, trust the honest search for understanding that is my daily need. So for the way that I deny him as equally as I deny myself, for the willing welcome of our Creator and the journey of this moment, and my full acceptance of him, I'm only enlightened this much. Because even on my off days, everything is really a lesson for me to learn, or this is just one more time of my indefinite denial of God, and I cannot see my way past, sadly enough, without following his will for all of us. End poem.
Gosh, I think this is such an intriguing piece. I really wish that, and I feel like there's missing pieces, right? I feel like it's an opportunity for us to kind of ruminate on each line. That in some ways there's some statements, but there's also questions that draw us in and ask us to communicate. And I appreciate that it kind of starts off with, this is who Robin Williams is. This is the person. They were so devoted to acting that they studied at the great school of Juilliard. But then there's this rumination of, I don't know what it means to love as completely as to say, I'm not going to have regrets. No, I'm not going to have regrets. I think that's a really hard thing, right? I love my children passionately. That's one of the things I say is I can replace just about anything in my life. I cannot replace my children. And so they are just something I'm not willing to sit idly by on, because I do not want to have inaction create a regret. And I and I apologize, I'm going to use a bad word, I'm going to use a potty word, but I always also kind of joke, like, I don't want to fuck up my kids, but I'm probably going to fuck up my kids.
Yeah.
It just best intentions, right? They'll perceive something, they'll do something, what have you. So with that in mind, I'm not sure, even as knowing that I love my children, and I believe that love is loving someone as they are without any expectation for change. I think that is what love is. Just my own 2 cents. Knowing that that is what I believe, I am still probably going to have regrets for something. And I can say that I have apologized to my children because I don't think I've handled something and I've had regret for how I've handled that. So I don't know that I do not know what it means to love someone so completely as to not have regrets. And I think that's such a poignant line, especially going back to the movie, which is all about someone who leaves heaven for the purpose of going to their loved ones, of saving their loved ones, of reconnecting with them, right? And we would think that leaving heaven would come with regrets. I then appreciate the way that it kind of ruminates down to even, faith. So, the capital hymn typically is, of God, of the Christian God. Jewish God also does it. I think the Islamic one as well. So they're all kind of under the Judaism. But, for the way that I deny him as equally as I deny myself. For him, I am only enlightened this much. It is, I think, a reminder, bringing it back to heaven where God lives, right? To leave him, to deny him. God does not, in the Christian sense, deny us, right? That's why denying him is a sin. And so I think in many ways this ruminates, and I apologize, I feel like my thoughts are maybe a little discombobulated, but I feel like this really ruminates in a way of like, we seek to go to heaven. I think every human would like to live in paradise afterwards. We don't really want to just like die and disappear. And there's probably people who do. No judgment. Everybody gets to believe what they want. But I think ideally, most people would like to believe that when this life ends, there's something better beyond it. There's some sort of continuation that there can be better. There is heaven. And we think of heaven as this beautiful place. And if there is a God, I expect God lives in heaven. And that God should love us as we are without expectation of change. And so to be enlightened that there is a God that has no regrets in their love for us, that is willing to give up for us. That is how we have this enlightenment, this journey, and understanding that we cannot see our way through this life without him, I think is just kind of that coming. So to me, this reads initially as a commentary upon Robin Williams and a love for acting, and brings it into this poem that reminds us of the love of God that they have given. I do read it in a Christian lens, which may or may not be accurate. Obviously, it's not the only religion, and there are religions with similar trends or similar belief patterns. And so in this one, I read it as a Christian perspective. But I think it's a really interesting rumination. I do want to sit and ruminate on those questions. This is one I wish I'd gotten a little bit more time with ahead of time. But I think it's really a quite interesting piece. So, and ramble and comment.
So hard for me to organize my thoughts. All right. So this is prompt 4, I think. And so it's not about understanding, it's about not giving up. To me, that first poetic, that first prose line about Robin Williams, to me, that focuses, or that sort of focuses the poem around, Robin Williams was I think what they're trying to say there is that Robin Williams was driven toward greatness, let's say. He went to Juilliard. He certainly aspired to be, a great comedian, a great actor. So that first part is about aspiration toward accomplishment or greatness. Let's call it understanding of the crafts of Robin Williams's crafts. And then to me, that's followed by someone who is questioning their faith, and because there's a lot of question marks in this poem, and so it's, to me, the poem is then questioning their faiths and their understanding of their faith, and so it's a lot of questioning, and yet there's so it's sort of a statement of not really understanding their faith, and yet they're still kind of putting one faith foot in front of the other, and so they're saying that I don't understand my faith necessarily. I don't understand God. I don't understand lessons, and sometimes I deny him as equally as I deny myself, etc. And that's okay, because I am still kind of trying to understand my faith. I'm still searching for an understanding of my faith. And so to me, that's how this reads, and that's how it relates to prompt 4, is it's an expression of uncertainty around their faith, and yet they're not giving up their faith. They're still working toward an understanding of it. Does that make sense?
No, I think it does. It actually really does, and I really appreciate that perspective. I didn't see prompt 4 on there, so I think that's maybe too where I got lost.
I'm reading between the lines with the prompt 4.
Got it.
Maybe I'm just still in it's PTSD after missing prompt 4 previously, but that's the prompt 4 reading, and sort of the description I just stumbled through is sort of the best way that I can understand this, I guess.
No, and I do really appreciate that. And what I really appreciate was what you were saying about how, faith, I have my own faith. People can have their faith. They can choose not to have faith. Again, I'm one of those people who I don't believe in putting my beliefs on other people.
Yep.
And so I do believe that faith is a journey. I think that, the reason my faith works is because I need to have grace to make mistakes. I need to have grace. Again, I don't want to fuck up my kids, but I'm going to fuck up my kids. I don't want to fuck up as a person, but I'm going to. And I think that no matter how many good intentions we have, no matter how faithful we are, no matter how pious we are in our beliefs, there's going to be things that we just don't do perfectly. And so with the way that you kind of explained it, I really appreciated it because I do believe that faith it's not this, you're perfect and you found your faith and you're set on it and there's going to be no problems. And instead, it's going to be more this journey of stumbling and finding our way and yet not giving up on it, continuing to try and stay on the path, continuing to try and do better each time, even when you fall off. So I do actually really appreciate that perspective. And I think that you gave such a much better commentary than I, just because I think that even in the grace of it, I think you really captured the heart of it and tied it all just really beautifully together. So very well said, I think, Jojo.
Well, so how would you like to do read Pac-Man's One Touch of Her Hand to
I would love to. All right, this is One Touch of Her Hand by Pac-Man. There are moments that survive the collapse of entire years. I remember her not as chronology, but as fragments. The movement of her hair when the evening wind crosses the shore, the warmth of her hand resting within mine, neither possessing nor asking, simply existing. A kiss beneath a sky that neither of us noticed because our attention was fixed upon something rarer, the certainty of another soul. Time continued its work with no warning of how much was felt or how much was left. Seasons changed, cities altered, photographs faded. The world replaced itself without much notice. Yet those small moments remained. It is a curious paradox. Human beings spend their lives seeking permanence, yet permanence itself contains no meaning. An endless existence empty of love would merely be duration. A single instant filled with genuine presence becomes something else entirely. It becomes measured and in turn memorable. The breath of her hair carried by autumn, the touch of her hand during winter, the memory of her lips long after silence had claimed them. These were not grand events. History never recorded them. No monument was raised in their honor. Yet they outweighed all the empty eternities that imagine could invent. Perhaps that's why loss hurts. Not because something lasted too briefly, not because we discovered that meaning was never hidden within endless time. Meaning lived within moments, and some moments, however fragile, become vast enough to eclipse eternity itself. And
in the author's note, Pac-Man says, the quote I have in mind is, I would rather have had one breath of her hair, one kiss from her mouth, one touch of her hand, than an eternity without it. You know, sometimes when we're judging these poems in these contests, we'll read them and you know, come to a viewpoint, and then later we'll read them on air or hear them read on air, and they'll kind of have a different impact. And more than once after a show, after judging a contest, I've had to apologize to a poet because, you know, like on second or third reading, it just sort of hit differently. And I'm starting to feel like this is that poem in this contest where an apology is owed, because hearing you read it, maybe I should have had Monarch read it out loud to me on Discord. Maybe it would have hit differently than me just reading it myself. This hits a little harder now than when I read it myself. So to me, this is reading as sort of a rumination, a memory of love. I guess I like the idea that I'm getting the sense that Pac-Man is saying that that love doesn't last forever, as kind of a temporal thing, that it's that love doesn't defeat time, I guess. But instead, it's defined by all of these small moments. So he's in the second stanza. I remember her not as a chronology, but as fragments, and then it's just a lot more of these little fragments. So I'm starting to think that my first reading of it just messed up, because what I like about it now is that it's that mosaic of a life that I was talking about with Macris's poem.
Yeah.
So now it's just sort of like all of these little fragments adding up that I had not, I don't know, it just, when I read it myself, it just didn't register the same. But now that I hear you reading it, yeah, I feel like this is a much stronger poem than I originally judged it as. Sorry, Pac-Man. This is really, really nicely done, I would say. And it really it doesn't fit with, you know, like the heaven and hell imagery of what dreams may come. But it's like this, well, like Macris's piece, it's like a meditation on love, and how love can just be this accumulation of
moments,
all of these little moments that make
Yeah.
up the love. And it's that, and now it's starting to hit me.
Yeah, no, and truth be told, I really appreciate you saying that. I actually pulled up Macris's poem because it reminded me of that too.
Yeah.
Pac-Man really beautifully caught, again, those little moments. And I do love their author's note of, you know, I would rather have one breath, one kiss, one touch than an eternity without it. Because again, it's not those big gestures, it's those little moments, it's those things that history doesn't record, right? A wedding is recorded, a birth is recorded, a death is recorded, but that's not who the person is. It's those little moments. And I have to say, I really appreciate poems like this.
Me too. Me too. Why didn't I judge this higher? Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna say it was reading fatigue. You just read too many. That's what I'm gonna say. I'll bring out the shame bell again. Don't worry, Jojo. We will make you pay penance. So at my firm, I actually head the estate and trust division. And so I speak with a lot of families who are dealing with the passing of a loved one. And usually the conversations that we have is, you know, on a tax side, there's 3 people who are going to get your money. The people you want, charities, or the government. That's where your money's going to go. What bucket do you want to put it in? And it's not so crass as that, but a lot of it starts with, what is the story that you want to leave behind? What is the picture you want to leave behind? What is the legacy you want to leave behind? And it's interesting because I'm even helping my parents plan their estate. We're doing a lot of estate planning for them right now. And my father does not believe in legacies. He's a diagnostic radiologist. Well, now retired, but was a diagnostic radiologist. And he I don't know the guy's name. I probably should, but he always likes to throw out this guy's name of who invented some sort of procedure using a radiology, and it's no longer used today. And so he'll say, you know, do you know who this guy is? And I'm like, of course, Dad, I don't know who that is. And he goes, well, it's the guy who did it. He goes, and nobody remembers him. And so that's his like end point proof that legacy doesn't matter, and he just doesn't want to pay taxes, and he's an interesting character. The reason I bring that up is because most people don't have to deal with death in the concept that I deal with it, because I'm dealing to certain season life, death, and taxes. That's what I do. But it's really interesting because the people that I am talking to who need my assistance because of a death typically don't come to me going, I've got to prepare a tax return. They don't come to me going, I need to figure out where to put my assets. They come to me going, you know, my mom was a really kind person, and she really wanted to take care of her kids. She really wanted to make sure her grandkids were taken care of. You know, she didn't die with a will. She died intestate. And I really want to make sure her memory is honored. It's not those big moments. It's the character of the person. It's the impact that they had. It's the little gestures. And to me, I really love these poems because they focus so heavily on those little things. Nobody's going to remember Elva for the newspaper article. She was a potter, and so when we landed on the moon, she took some clay and she put it on the printing press and turned it into a pot, and there was a news article about it. Nobody cares about that. I don't think anybody remembers that besides her kids and me. But the impact that Elva did leave on me is a woman who let me come over and help her make dinner and then would send me home. A woman who, when my mother cut my hair, let me hide in her bush and call my mom and tell my mom I was safe, and then let me stay at her home as if I was allowed to live there, and then found a way to gently send me back home. A woman who went for walks after she broke her hip for the 3rd time and forgot her walker, and would put her hand on my head, and I would walk slowly with her cane, and she would tell me about canardlies. It's those little things that impacted. It's not the big person that was Elva. It's not the big person who's Renee. It's not the big person who was my grandparents or my uncle or my aunt who have all passed. It's the little things. It's the way people treat us. It's the way they make us feel. It's the little quirks that we appreciate that make the people who we love. And I think these poems just do a beautiful job capturing it. And Pac-Man did such a beautiful job of capturing it. So, yeah, stunning piece.
Gotta say, I'm going to get really tired of walking naked through King's Landing with the same bell behind me.
Shame.
Shame. Well, I think that brings us toward the end.
Okay.
Thank you for joining, and thank you for filling in so beautifully and brilliantly for Monarch, and for the great discussion. Thank you to Robbie for joining us, and to Hats for hanging out until the bitter end. And as always, thank you to Pam, because Pam is here sitting.
She runs the show.
Running the show, waiting for us to finish so that she can go to bed. So sorry, Pam, we're 6 minutes over again. But thank you, everybody. And thank you, Victoria.
Always. Thanks, Jojo, for having me. Have a good night, everyone.
Yep. Bye.